Hello everyone, and welcome to today's 30 tips in 30 days from RTO Doctor. And I'm Raylene Bartlett and I'm the founding director of RTO Doctor. Before anything, I'd like to apologise for the delay in today's tip and even yesterday's and Wednesday's as well. I realise that for some people in the eastern states it's a little bit late in the evening, and so you may not be able to join us. I've been a little bit busy the past few days delivering some face-to-face workshops for some clients here in Perth in WA, and in delivering those workshops sometimes I don't finish until about 6 p.m. in the evening. By the time I get back to the office and think about, oh, what am I going to talk about today, it starts to get a little bit late, and so I do apologise for those of you who can't join us live. However, please do feel free to watch the live stream when you can join us, and leave any comments and questions in the comment section. I'll be sure to follow them up and answer any questions you may have. Also, if you've got any suggestions or topics that you would like for me to discuss, please also leave those comments in the comment section, and I will make sure that I get them and address them as I can. So today's topic is in relation to currency for trainers and assessors. This was due to a special request, and it was something that I covered a little bit in my PD session with my clients today, actually. We didn't go into it in huge detail, so if they're watching, now's your opportunity. But first of all, I guess what we need to determine is what is industry currency in your industry area. So for some industries, some things won't change in terms of what makes you current and what doesn't make you current. In other industries, if you take, for example, the health services training package, and we look at first aid, for example, the Australian Resuscitation Council make it very clear that for CPR to be current, it has to be renewed every 12 months and first aid every 3 years. So the currency requirements for maintaining currency as a trainer and assessor would at least be every 12 months for your CPR and every 3 years for your first aid. But what about other industry areas? That really depends on what it means to be consistent with a training package. So what does your training package say that you need to do to maintain currency? It could also have something to do with what your organisation has determined as a whole is current for industry currency. Most people or most organisations will relate to industry currency in terms of what would they consider current evidence if they were conducting an RPL, or recognition of prior learning, for a student who is submitting evidence for a qualification or a unit of competency. And in most cases, people would say that 2 years is current. But it may depend on the industry, as we said before. CPR is one example, and the RTO themselves may have a completely different definition of what industry currency is. But it could also be determined by your industry engagement that you conduct as part of the development of your training and assessment strategies. So your industry engagement may suggest that your industry currency be renewed every 6 months. It could be that industry believe that for you to be current, you need to be performing certain skills and knowledge at least every 3 months, every 12 months, every 18 months. It really comes down to what is current in your industry, what is current in your industry engagement, what is current in terms of your training package. And a good example for an example that I like to use is, for example, if you're a nurse and you have been off work for maybe 5 years, you've gone away and you've gone on maternity leave, and you haven't worked as a registered nurse in all that time. You've maintained your requirements for staying registered as a nurse with APRA, but you haven't physically worked as a registered nurse in the last 5 years because you've been at home looking after baby, and all of a sudden you've decided that you want to come back to work. So you've maintained your registration with APRA, but all of a sudden you're finding yourself as a casual nurse working in the emergency department of a hospital, and you're required to cannulate a patient. Now, I can't imagine, I'm not a nurse by the way, but I can't imagine that inserting a cannula is like riding a bike, and so if you fall off the bike you get back on and you remember how to do it. It's easy as that. I would imagine that the process for cannulation changes quite a lot in the space of 5 years. The equipment, the policies and procedures, the sterilisation requirements. I would imagine that there's a whole range of things that change in that 5-year period. And so one needs to think about what might maintain their currency in terms of registration with an endorsement or a membership body may not necessarily mean that they are current in terms of performing the skills that are required to do that job, and they may not have current knowledge. Another example that I wanted to briefly touch on was in relation to qualifications and competency and currency, and I really only wanted to cover this very briefly because what we have in the vet sector is a range of trainers and assessors who hold qualifications, and they will develop a trainer and assessor matrix that maps qualification against qualification. And if you take, for example, the Diploma of Management, which is now the Diploma of Leadership and Management, many trainers and assessors are using the previous qualification, the Diploma of Management, as evidence that they are competent and current to deliver and assess in the Diploma of Leadership and Management. The issue arises, one, because they're not equivalent, but two, because the Diploma of Management has 8 elective units in it. The Diploma of Leadership and Management has 4 core units and 8 elective units, but just because somebody holds a Diploma of Management doesn't necessarily mean that they're competent and current to deliver and assess the Diploma of Leadership and Management. There are many units of competency that can come together to form the packaging of a Diploma of Management. And so I could hold a Diploma of Management and be training and assessing in one organisation and training a completely different Diploma of Management in another organisation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm competent and current in each of the units of competency that make up that qualification in each of those RTOs. So I just briefly wanted to touch on that because it's really important that when we're mapping our competency and currency to demonstrate as evidence for an auditor that we hold the qualifications and experience in accordance with Standard 1.13 of the Standards for RTOs 2015, that we are mapping it correctly and that we're mapping it down to the unit level. And as we've just described, mapping it to a qualification doesn't necessarily mean that you are competent and current to deliver all of the units of competency within that qualification, particularly in terms of the qualification that you're delivering. So that leads me to, what is an auditor actually looking for when they're looking at your competency and currency in industry? Well, they're looking to find out, what does currency mean in your industry? So you could be a motor mechanic, for example, and not much changes in the industry in terms of how to conduct a service on a vehicle. However, you may have learned how to conduct a service on a vehicle 20 years ago, and the way that cars have evolved over the last 20 years is completely different. So you may have learned how to work on a car that didn't have all the computer systems that it does today. So you may not have the knowledge requirements that are required to train and assess in the current environment for the automotive training package, as an example. They're looking to know, what knowledge and skills do you need in order to ensure that you're up to date. So they're looking to see whether or not the knowledge and skills that you have are appropriate not only to the qualification in the training package, but they're also looking to confirm that the knowledge and skills that your industry engagement has captured as part of that industry consultation process is being incorporated into your professional development and making sure that your competency in currency reflects current trends that are being experienced in your industry area. They're looking to see that the PD program or professional development program that you've set for yourself is appropriate to achieve currency or to maintain currency with the industry requirements and the training package requirements, and that they will enable you to make sure that you are constantly able to provide current training and assessment activities to the students who are enrolling in your courses that you're responsible for making an assessment judgment about. And importantly, what they're looking for is that you have evidence to demonstrate all of these things. So if you look at a unit of competency, for example, manage meetings, what they will be looking for is that not only have you, in the last year or 2 years, not only have you written an agenda and conducted meeting minutes, they'll be looking at all of the knowledge and skill areas within that unit of competency as well as the assessment conditions, and making sure that you have performed those skills or demonstrated that knowledge somehow in the meetings that you've worked in or participated in the last 2 years. I can see that I've got a few people who have joined in. Do you have any questions? No, nobody's got any questions? So if there are no more questions for today, I'd like to wrap up with that and wish you all a fabulous weekend. I will have a live stream for you tomorrow and Sunday. It's 30 days, 30 tips, regardless of the weekend, I'll be here. If you have a special request for a topic, please leave a comment below in the comment section, and I'll take that on board and see what I can do. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me and have a great weekend. Bye for now.